Welcome back. We have just finished an investigation to what is called monetary policy. Monetary policy is run by the Fed, the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. We are now going to take a look at fiscal policy, which is not run by the Fed, it's run by Congress, and I'm going to call them the Feds. Now, the most important thing to understand, because I notice many of you are beginning to use these terms interchangeably, is that you cannot use them interchangeably. The fact remains, monetary policy is not the same thing as fiscal policy, and the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, or the Fed, is not the same thing as Congress, which I shall call the Feds. And there's no denying, since it's April 21st, 2020, how important it is to understand, because this is what you're hearing about every day for those who turning into the news. And I'm going to give you a better understanding theoretically about where they're coming from. So let us now jump into what is known as fiscal policy. Number one, unlike the Feds only have two tools. They can change levels of spending. They can spend more or they can spend less, or they can change levels of tax collections. They can bring in more tax revenue. They can bring in less tax revenue. And typically, these two terms are what you would hear about in a government class. A discretionary action is something that is done by the government at the moment. For example, the last couple of weeks, the federal government, Congress, issued an economic stimulus plan to address the slowdown of our economy due to the coronavirus or whatever you believe it to be. The fact that they just did it is simply an example of a discretionary action. Non-discretionary is simply an action that will just happen because there's some law that was put in place, whether it was last year, last decade, or frankly from the 1920s, it automatically kicks in. For example, since we are in April, your parents probably are going to need to have to pay their taxes. The tax policies are something that's already in place. It is a non-discretionary action. It's the difference, and this is my analogy, since we are just having spring kick in. We just went through a foot of snow. Now it's a beautiful 70-degree weather in approximately 2 days. It's a difference between your sprinklers going on via timer. That would be non-discretionary. Your parents programmed it last year to just kick on during the exact days and times they want, versus them telling you to get outside, stand there for 30 minutes and water the grass because there's some brown spots. Them telling you to go water the grass is known as a discretionary action. Now, many of your eyes have been wandering into this picture. This picture represents political perspectives. Now, seniors, if you and I spend time in government, then I'm sure you're well versed in the difference between government and politics. If you understand the difference, all you underclassmen, you're wee little children, and at some point, hopefully next year, I will help you get a better understanding. And when we look at this picture, well, some of you are saying, oh, this must be the federal government, here to save and address the evils known as recession. Others might be thinking, you know what, quite honestly, this is the federal government. It is only thankfully the people who can tamp down any governmental power overreach. That is when I jump into the question of policies and politics. And we throw out terms like Republican and Democrat, liberal and conservative, progressive, leftist, libertarian, you name it. That is an issue for government class. I'm not here to discuss your particular political opinion. I'm just here to give you a sense of the economic policies. So let's go for it. Number one. Yay, it's President Trump. So say all the red people out there. Nicely done. Boo, it's President Trump. So say all the blue people out there. Whether it's President Trump or, quite honestly, boo, it's President Obama, say the red people. Yay, it's President Obama, say the blue people. That is simply not relevant to me in any way, shape, or form. I'll tell you what is true is neither President Obama or President Trump, when they were respective presidents, are economists by definition. You should understand that. So, being wise people, both of them look to advise. So, as part of the executive branch, there's a group of people known as the Council of Economic Advisors, and they do exactly that. They advise the president on economic matters. Now, unfortunately, most of you are under the impression that it is the executive branch that is the power in the United States of America. That was never the intent of the writers of the Constitution. It was always meant to be Congress, people's branch. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Indeed, it's just this is a direct result of a lot of things that have happened, which hopefully you've studied in U.S. history. What you really need to know is that you guys know these people, but you don't know these people. These are economists. These are college professors. These are professionals, experts in their banking industry. These are the people who give the advice to the executive branch. They give advice to perhaps the legislative branch. They are the ones who help form policy. And all comes back to this. So let's say a dear aunt or aunt, depending upon your accent and when you were born and where you were born, what would you do with $100? And of course, I could go around the classroom and all you guys could tell me exactly what you would do. But if I was to step back, I would realize that really there's just two choices when it's all said and done. Either you're this person. And who is this person? Well, this person likes to spend now. They are taking their $100 and they're going to go get one of your typical millennial overpriced lunches for $50 during the time you have for lunch. Or maybe you're this person who parents made you watch Dave Ramsey and you are very, where am I at? There we go. You like to save. Now, you should understand the concept of saving. You save to spend later. So the option really is now you're spending now, or the option is you're spending later. It is all about spending. And if it's true for you, it's true for the rest of us. That's really only the options we have. So when we look at the thousands of people of the United States of America, and we think about money as a medium of exchange to purchase goods and services either now or later, that means that spending must be pretty important. And I remind you, spending on goods and services that must be produced. Which means more money is heading to the owners of the capital and the owners of the land and to the owners of the labor. So, person A consumes $100. What does that mean to person B? Well, Dominic, this is some free advertising for you. Mrs. Wynn wants salad, pizza, and beer. We're headed to Autopine. So I dutifully trudge along to pay the bill, and let's say it's $100. More importantly, what do I get? I get the utility of the pizza, the beer, and the salad. What does Autopine get? Well, money from person A becomes income to person B. And what does Autopine do with their money? Well, Autopine, as always, has two options. They either can spend it now, which much of it must go to their employees. About that, it must go to purchase what is necessary to produce the pizza, the beer, and the salads themselves. And then maybe they save and put money aside to address future business decisions. I don't know, but I still know there's just two options. So let's take a look at this as an idea. Economists call the ability of every $1, some of it is consumed. That is called the marginal propensity to consume. Marginal, you should know that word in this class, is all about additional. Propensity just means the likelihood. Consume means you're spending. And everything that is not consumed by definition is saved. Therefore, you also have a marginal propensity to save. Simply meaning in every $1, it's just broken up into spend some, save some, and there's just no other options. And since there's no other options, that means 100%, which is nice when you do mathematics. So we would take a look at our class. We would notice not every single person has the same MPC and the MPS, but we could average the numbers to give us some general idea. And that is an idea. So let's look at this mathematically very quickly. Let's assume the society has an MPC of 0.75, which means 75%, which means for every dollar they spend 75 cents. And an MPS of 0.25, which means 25%, which means for every dollar they save 25 cents. There's no other options. Notice those two add up to 1, which is 100%. Let's say that I earn $5. What does that mean? That means that I saw an overall increase in income of $5. And of the $5, I'm going to spend 75 cents of it, or 75% of it. 75% of $5 is 0.75 times 5. And anything I left over, I'm saving, which corresponds to 25%. But spending by me becomes income to somebody else. So in this case, that spending is somebody else's income. They then spend 75% of it, which means they save 25% of it. What does that mean? Well, when person B spends, that becomes income to person C, who then spends 75% of it and saves 25% of it. And on and on and on and on and on and on and this goes. Now, of course, notice that gradually the change in consumption keeps going down, 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 and the income keeps going down, 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 but it's always something. Now, this sounds vaguely familiar. Yes, for those of you who watch those videos of monetary policy, this does sound familiar. So I just got to make sure I can separate the two. Here we go. Number one, fiscal policy is run by Congress and the feds. There's an idea that if they spend more or less directly, or they tax you at a higher or lower rate, which affects your spending more or less, it kickstarts a round of spending in the economy. That is known as a spending multiplier. Last week, we talked about an entity called the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. They are not Congress or the feds. They're the Fed. And since they are not Congress or the Fed, see, key thing, are not. They don't run fiscal policy. They run monetary policy. And we realize that since they control the reserve ratio, which targets banks' excess reserves, which means it targets commercial banks' ability to give out loans. And people take out loans because they want to spend, and that money creates a ripple effect in the economy. That ripple effect is called the monetary multiplier. People, not the same thing, not the same thing, not the same thing. For the record, not the same building. But I'll tell you one thing, it really does seem like it's the same general idea being used. And if you came to that conclusion, you're probably correct. Hope you now have a better understanding of the differences between the two. And in the next class, we'll take a closer look at fiscal policy. Have a great day.